This episode sponsored by Lake Monster Decals, producing the Don's Light and Magic Legacy line of parts, offering upgrade parts and decals for accuracy, special effects, and lighting. Visit www.lakemonsterdetails.com and make it glow. Also sponsored by Decals, producing aftermarket replacement decals and custom quality graphics for your favorite spaceships. Visit www.gcals.company.site and add some personalization to your sci-fi models today. Hey, what's up guys? Will here. Welcome back to Modeling from the Ensign Chair. This is supplement number 2 for the NX-01 build. And I got to explain to you. So I was trying out a new camera setup and it didn't work out too well. I recorded about 15-20 minutes worth of footage going over this Photoetch that I'm doing for my personal NX-01 build, and only to find out that the audio wasn't working on the new camera. And so I've had to turn around and return that back to Amazon, and now I'm having to use the camera that I've had. Now the camera I've got, and a couple people have commented that they don't like the fisheye effect, but when I started doing these videos I wasn't sure how much of it I was going to do or how well it was going to do as far as people watching them, and I just grabbed the camera I had, which was my Sony Action Cam, and that's what I've been using this whole time. So I tried to get a new camera and a new setup and try to do something a little bit better with it, but it didn't work out. So for this week I'm still back to the old tried and true and using that camera. But at any rate, it was asked if I could do a little more in depth on this Photoetch, because I started putting the Photoetch on. I just put on some of the observation deck windows, which I went over in the previous previous supplement. And what I'm working on now is doing the shuttle bay and this cargo bay that comes with the Paragraphics Photoetch set. And when I was putting this together, that's what I was doing the video on. I was showing how I was going to do this, and how I was using the Photoetch along with the HDA ModelWorks decals. And like I said, it was all for naught. It was a waste. There was no sound, or there was sound, but you could barely hear it, and it wouldn't have been worth posting, because you wouldn't be able to tell what the heck I was saying unless you can read lips really well. So at any rate, I did finish this part, which is the cargo bay that goes in the undersection. Well, I'm going to do it in the undersection if I do it. I got a couple of things I'm going to do first, but I'm going to use the port cargo bay hatch if I do it. I'm going to remove this, cut it out, and this piece will insert along with another piece I've got to cut out yet and work on. But this piece will insert, and this will be the cargo bay. You never saw it in the series itself, so I don't really have to have it, but if I can work it out and make it look cool, then I'll do it. You know, I'll make it, if it can add a little bit more depth to the model itself, then that would be great. So I've done this one. This part is done, but I've still got to do the shuttle bay yet, which is what I'm working on now. And I guess I'll go back over that for anybody that's interested in seeing, maybe hasn't done much with Photoetch before, or you know, wants to see how I'm going to do it. Which you know, everybody has their own way of doing things, but I've got my way of doing things, and this is I'll show you how I'm going to do it. So we're going to do that, and we'll see what else we're going to get into this episode. But stick around, give me a minute, I'll put you on the bench, we'll get to work. Alright guys, so this is the part that I've already cut out. This is the shuttle bay, or part of it anyway, the main part of it. And so what I do is, let me first start off by, those that aren't used to working with Photoetch, this is how I've removed the Photoetch from this, I guess you could call this kind of a sprue in a way, but this is how I remove the Photoetch. Now, you want to be careful with the stuff, because like you can see here, maybe, I bent this a little bit, but I'll get it, be easier for me to bend it back into place once I get it off. But at any rate, they sell snips specifically, or clippers specifically for Photoetch. but they're kind of pricey from what I've seen. So the easiest thing to do and the cheapest thing to do is just take your hobby knife, make sure you have a sharp blade on it, get you a nice solid firm surface, and then you can just take your blade, and where you've got these connectors at here, you just take your blade and cut right through it. Just press down onto the surface, and you can kind of feel it cut right through it. And cut as close to the piece as you can without damaging the actual photo etch piece that you want, because it's less work you're going to have to do to trim these off later. But you want to have a firm surface, because if you don't, what will happen is, for instance, if I tried to do this on the towel, it would end up bending the piece before it actually cut through it. So make sure you have a firm surface, hobby knife, and you're good to go. It'll fit in there. Let's take a look at where this has been at. I think I dropped something on this earlier, and it bent it just a little bit there. But bend it back as best I can. That's the only thing. Once you misshape this stuff, it can be a pain in the butt to get it back. But you see, I've got a couple of little stubs on here still. So I'll just take my scissors and just very carefully just nip it off, just like that. Just trim this off real good. Now, most of this isn't going to matter if you did have these little nubs on here, because you're not going to see that part. These parts actually fit into the surrounding piece here. So, but once you get that cut off, what the directions from Paragraphics say, if you're using decals with this part doesn't get a decal, but this will get additional photo etch attached. There's some photo etch railings that got to attach to this. So we're going to put that aside for now, and we'll pick back up where I've left off with this piece, which is basically Paragraphics. If you're going to be using the decals with this, they say to first you want to prime this with whatever, they say a metal primer. I've always used the Tamiya primers, and on these, and I've never had a problem with them. Prime them, let them dry real good, and you should be good to go. I actually put the regular Tamiya gray primer on this first, and I came over it with the fine white primer, and it does a really good job of covering it. But they want you to use the fine white, or not the fine white, but they want you to use kind of a gloss primer on this for the decals, because that way you can slide your decals around more. I've always done just the Tamiya fine white primer on this, and I've never had a problem with getting decals move around. What I've got over here is some slightly warm soapy water. It's kind of been sitting here for a minute, so actually it's kind of cooled off a little bit, but we can change that out before I do the decals. We got a little bit more work to do on this first. So I've cut this loose, I've primed it, and what I'm going to do now is, there's a couple of spots on here where they're lights or windows, and you can see that. Move it out the way. These two right here are observation windows, and if you look at those on the decal, they actually have a little bit of coloring in here and some detail in here that's going to backlight through that. So you want that open, because that's going to let that light come through this and highlight this detail in here. The other windows, you've got these little windows here on each side, and you've got your lights up top that are going to come through this, and then you've got a couple little more spots down here that are lit up. Now, the only thing about this I'm not sure about yet is on the Paragraphics Photo Etch part, they've got these two little slits here. Now these little ones right here, these little thin ones, are where this part that I just cut out is going to attach to it. It's where it's going to slide into place at. So that's what these little slits here are for. But this one, and these two over here, I'm not too sure what those are for. So what I'm going to do is, what I like to do with these is I'll fill these in where there's going to be light supposed to be coming through, or anytime there's supposed to be any kind of window. What I'll do is I'll fill these in with my UV resin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some tape, and I'm just going to tape the back side of this, sticky side up. The reason why I'm going to do this is because we're going to fill this in, or I'm going to fill this in. Whether or not you do, it's up to you. But this is, like I said, this is how I do mine. Not everybody does theirs the same way. But actually, you know, it's going to be easier if I just take one solid piece for that. But then I'm going to take this and put it on the back here. Alright, so we got our tape on here. And what I'm going to do is make sure that's nice and pressed and you got a good seal on that tape so that way it doesn't leak through all over the place. What I'm going to take is I'm going to take my UV resin I've got here. And this is stuff I've shown before. This is the Decal UV resin that I get off of Amazon. And I'll post a link below. I've posted it before, so some of you that have been watching my videos have seen it. But it's way cheaper than some of the other stuff that's out there. But I think like the Solar Res, for example, is really expensive. This stuff here, you get, well, it's 120 grams. It's a really big bottle compared to the Solar Res, and it's cheaper, but it works just as well. So what I do with this is I just take a little bit and get it on my pointer here. And I just come in and start dropping it in these little window openings here. Alright guys, so I got this all done, and yes, you guys are sitting there looking, well, wouldn't it be better to tape it off from the front and fill it from the back? Yeah, don't ask me what I was thinking. I don't know why I was filling it from the front, but it's better to tape it in the front here and then fill it from the back, and that way any of that UV resin that kind of spills out across the front, if it doesn't get any of that UV light, it doesn't solidify, so it's a little easier to clean up the front. But so at any rate, all these are filled in. I got the top filled in, and you see how nice, and hopefully it comes out on camera how clean that looks, because I filled it from the front or the back instead of the front, which this one here is a little bit. You won't be able to tell that because, like I said, we're going to put a decal on here. It's going to cover it up anyway. Really, the only thing we need is to make sure we got something for that decal to stick to, and to allow that part to backlight. So what I'm going to do now is cut this decal out. And these decals, just keep in mind from HDA Model Works, aren't like the decals that come with the kit. They're not die cut. They're not pre-cut to the area that they need to go on. So you kind of got to cut these yourself, and you want to cut them as close. Let me just cut this out so I can get to it. You want to cut these as close to the decal as possible without actually cutting the decal off. So we'll set that aside for later. And like I said, I used the HDA Model Works decals for my Polar Lights 1350 TOS build, and they were spectacular. They worked out perfectly, much better than the kit decals. I was having a whole lot of problems with those Polar Light decals that came with the kit. I'm hoping this re-release they're doing with the pilot kit parts already included. I'm hoping they did something better with those decals, but I'm ain't gonna hold my breath on it. It was explained to me that they pretty much use a third party to outsource their decals, and it seems here lately they've been getting kind of crap decals from whoever's doing them. I know when I did the 1350 refit, probably 10 years ago, the decals were excellent that came with it, but those decals that came with the TOS one that I just did a couple months ago were just terrible. They didn't lay down very well. They'd fall apart on me, and I know some people said they haven't had any issues with them, but I sure as heck did. Alright, so we've got this cut out, and I'm not too worried about a little bit sticking out, because when I use that micro saw, any excess that's sticking around the edges is just going to kind of wrap around the edges. But what we're going to do here, because what I found out with this part over here is that it's almost like these decals were meant to fit when this part is folded in position already, which would be a real pain in the butt to try to get the decal in this after it's been folded. So what I did, what I ended up doing with this part, was I cut the decals up into sections, and it made it a lot easier to get, because you got all these hatches, these portals, and all these little windows and stuff that need to line up with the photo etch part. So the easiest thing to do is just cut this into a couple different sections. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this right along here for my first section. go there. And then I'm going to cut this one right along here for my next section. And I'm going to cut this one in half as well. And what that's going to do is make it a lot easier to get these portals lined up. And also, it saves us because when we go to fold this thing all together, if we had these all one piece, now it might not be a problem if I have the microsol on it, but it's going to want to get like a little bulge here where you fold these corners at, and this just kind of helps avoid that. Oop. So we'll cut the roof off as well, so we can do that separately. And you won't notice these gaps because once you fold them, these parts will all touch, all these decals are going to touch together and fill in any little gaps. So we've got all of these cut up where we need them. Let me cut this one just to shave off just a little more of this excess on it. And shave off a little more of this excess on this one. You just want to shave off, cut off as much of the excess as you can, but like I said, I'm not too worried about if there's just a little bit on there because we're going to end up, it's going to end up wrapping around this once I use the microsol. So, alright, so let's start on this end, and we'll just get our decal wet. So let's sit there for a minute. I wish I knew what happened to the paper towel. I may have to run and get a paper towel real quick, but you don't need to let these sit in there too long, just enough to get the back saturated on it, the paper backing on it, and then you can just let it sit on a paper towel or a hand towel that I've got here. And just let it sit there till it's ready to separate. Move these out the way a little bit. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and soak this one too, because this will be the next part that goes on. I'm going to take a little bit of this water and just kind of dab it on where I'm going to be putting this decal at. And this has a little bit of Dawn dish detergent in it, so it'll help these decals slide around a little easier too. We'll take that one out, let it sit there, and this one should be ready to slide off already. It's one thing about these decals from HDM Works, they are excellent. They will slide off. It'll take no time for these things to be ready to come off the paper backing. So sorry if my head gets in the way a minute here. We'll get this lined up. Make sure that window is lined up where I need it. That looks good. I'll take the next part and get that soaked. And we'll let that sit. Put a little water on here. Let's see, this is our next one. So this should be ready to slide off. That right on there. I can see that this is off just a little bit. Try to line it up as best I can. You see we got a little bit of a gap. Just a little bit of a gap between these, but that's where this one needs to be and this one needs to be. Both of them need to be to line up on those portals that need to shine through these holes here. So we've got those lined up, and like I said, you don't have to worry about this because once we fold this, you're not going to see that little gap in there. It'll kind of fill in there. Put a little water on here. All right. Again, we've got a little window on here that needs to line up properly. And we do want to make sure that these line up because once I put that microsol on here, it's going to really suck that decal down on there so it'll look like it's painted on. All right, we got that done. I can get this one soaked. I could have made that cut a little bit straighter, but that's alright. Like I said, you're not going to see it. Alright, that one's ready. And we'll go ahead and get this one saturated. Alright, put a little water on here. Now if you go to slide these and they don't slide, let them sit a little bit longer. Don't try to force them to slide, because I haven't had a problem with it with these decals, but these decals from HDM Model Works, but you can make it cause it to tear if you, where is that window? Oh, it's because it's sitting on that. Couldn't tell where the window was at. It's sitting on that silver paint right there was showing through it. Alright, so we got that one in place. And last but not least, let's get us a little water on here. Now this one's the one that's really going to need to line up, because there's a lot of little windows on this part that need to line up where your lights are. But yeah, wasn't that hard. It's lined right up. These decals actually they fit pretty well. Like I said, these I'm not surprised by these little gaps right here, because you do have let me see if I can pick this up a second, make sure these are all lined up real well. Because it is gonna make the decal a little bit off because of the corners, the way you got to fold it and the way these need to fit together. So, but at any rate, those are in place. I'm gonna let those dry and set those where I ain't gonna mess with them. I'm gonna let those dry, and then we're gonna come back and put a little microsol on it and let those kind of suck down a little bit, and we'll come back and see where we're at. So stay tuned. All right, guys. So. This is all set up, the decal's dry on it, and it's looking alright so far. I'm a little concerned about how wide this gap is, but I think we'll be alright. What I'm going to do now is take a little bit of this microsol just to get this decal to pull down a little bit more, because I do have a couple little air pockets on here, and typically what I do is after it dries, I'll come back with my razor blade and I'll just carefully puncture any little air pockets I've got on here. Just do that ever so slightly. I don't want to tear the decal. So once I cut that so that the air can come out of those air pockets, I'll take a little bit of this microsol on the brush, and I'll just carefully brush it on here. Doesn't take a whole lot, as long as you get it get a light coating of it on there. You don't have to soak it heavily in microsol. So do that, and I will let that sit for a bit. You don't want to touch this while that microsol is doing what it does. It's normal for you to get little air bubbles or little bubbles of that on the decal, and for it to look a little shriveled. Sometimes it'll shrivel up a little bit and then it'll kind of lay flat down. So you don't want to mess with it while this stuff is working, so just kind of set that part, if I can grab it without messing with the decal, set that part to the side and let it do its thing. And so this part here that I've done already, what I decided to do, and the directions suggest this, and I decided to go ahead and give it a try, is to leave one of these side doors off and fabricate, using some sheet styrene, which I've got, fabricate another room over here if you want. And you're not going to see much of it, so there's not a whole lot I've got to do to it. Basically that's about as much of a view as you're going to get of it looking through it at an angle. So I'm going to fabricate a little something for this, and out of the sheet styrene, just to give it a little more depth to it. So but I don't have I got to go get some more sheet styrene. I don't have what I need to do for that. The stuff I've got is going to be too thick. I need something a little thinner to bend and shape the way I want to do it. So other than that, we got this piece here I need to prime yet, and let's take a look at the directions here real quick. See if I can get this moved again. I'll put it up here out the way. Okay. So this section here is what I'm working on now. Then we've got this little grid here that's supposed to be like a catwalk. That's what I've got cut out. right there. And we've got some railings that we need to do. So I cut these railings out so I can go ahead and get those painted up and primed. Your railings are right here. Now I really don't need to do both because I'm not doing both. You can do 2 of these shuttle bays open if you want. I'm only doing 1. So what I'm going to do is just cut out 1 rail, and then that way if I mess up on the 1 rail, I've got a little backup. But it's another one of those spots, especially these little pieces like this. You definitely want to make sure that you either have a pair of the snips for the photo etch, or that you got a nice firm surface like this to cut with your hobby knife. So make sure I break through all these. Let's see if it's loose. I think I got one here I missed. Cut all the way through on these. There we go. Alright, so now we've got that. Like I say, you gotta be careful with these because these bend really easy. What I'm gonna do now is come through here with my pair of scissors here and just kind of nick that one little piece off. Oop. Some of these I think are, I'm going to nip all these off because some of these are meant to be on that lower part to give a little space with your railings there. I do want to take off these little ones here on the top rail. You gotta be real careful on this piece because it'll be real easy to cut through that top rail in there. Let's see, we got one little spot here. Pardon me. Just a dead in there, buzz here. All right. So what I'll do is, what you can do also is on these parts here is kind of come in with a little file. You don't want to do it across this way if you can help it because it's easier to bend the piece. If you come across it, you want to come down it lengthways if you can, and help take down those little high spots there. Just do it lightly because if you do it too harshly, you're going to end up bending your little photo etch part here. It's going to be good. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take these parts, I'm going to go prime them up, and when we come back we should be able to look at starting to bend these pieces here into place. So give me a little bit and we'll work on that and we'll be back. Alright guys, so I've got my little catwalk here and the railing here painted up. Did a little bit of a silver on it. Just give it a little bit of a shiny finish to it. And basically what you do is just take a pair of tweezers or something for these little parts here like this, and where there's these little, I guess they call them gussets, you want to take and bend that part right there. You want to make sure that that little notch, one side of this has like a notch to it on the outside where it needs to be on the outside, so you just take it and bend it. Using your tweezers kind of helps to make sure that you bend it at an angle and not in a curve. Sometimes it's hard to spot where these little spots are, but there's another one here. But actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this end here real quick before I do that part. It'll be a little easier to do this before get this bent around. And then we'll bend this one, bends right here. Alright. So what you end up with is a shape like that. And those are your railings, and they're just going to glue right down onto your part here. Something like that. So the next thing we need to do is get some glue on here. Make sure these are evened up. Next what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use my tweezers to handle this so I don't bend it out of shape again. Get it as bent in the shape as possible before you try to attach it. Alright, so that's the shape I want it in. And then what we'll do is we'll take a little bit of our glue here. And I like to use my little pointer here because it lets me put the glue down. Just a small drop of glue. Put too much on here. Actually what I'm going to do is let me move this part because I don't want it to glue to the table, because I put just a little drop too much on there and it ends up getting on the table, and then my part's glued to the table, and then I get to bend it up trying to get it off the table. So just going to put little drops of glue at some of these little joints here. Alright. I'll take my tweezers, take my little part here that I've got pretty much bent into the shape I need it to be in. I think we're good. Gets in place where I need it. Just needs to set up a little bit. But you can see the railing on there. Hopefully the camera's not blurring it out. But we got that railing on there. I could put the railing on the other side, but like I said, you're not going to see it. And I'd kind of like to keep an extra one just in case this one gets bent. I got to hold this down a little bit because I see it's coming up in one corner there. It's not quite laying flat. There we go. All right, I think we're good there. Looks like everything is set in place. We'll let that set and dry. And looks like this part here is about ready. So for this section here, there is a tool you can buy to help do these folds in it. Another suggestion that Paragraphics makes in their instructions is to use a razor blade. Now, I'll tell you now, be careful with the razor blade. it will cut you in case you don't know. And if you're under the age of 18, please get permission from your parents or their assistants. And anybody else, please be careful with this. If you cut your finger off, don't go looking at me saying, well, he told me to. Well, you know what, I told you it's sharp too and you can hurt yourself. So be careful with it. That's my disclaimer. But the reason that they suggest using this is because you can put this razor blade where it's supposed to fold at and kind of help hold it there. Put it right in the crease there. If I'm using somewhat of a dull razor blade, so get my finger under here to bend this up. But what that does is it helps to make sure that you're bending it and not kind of getting a curve on the edge of it, so you get a nice sharp bend to it, just like that. Otherwise, you try to bend it without something there, you could get a curve in. But these photo etch parts are usually pretty good at bending, so you shouldn't have really any problems out of it. Alright, and we're going to do the same thing with this one. See, it gets a little stuck in there. Got to open it up a little bit, get my razor blade out. There we go. Alright, so now we got 2 bends to it. And we'll do one more bend here for the walls. Alright, so we've got our walls bent into place. Alright, so there we go. We got our railings in place on there. That's all painted up. And the next step is just to stick it in. I've already started folding this little shuttle bay up here. And basically all we got to do is take this part here. Let me open this back up a little bit, make it a little easier to put in there. And we want this part, I believe, it really doesn't look like it's going to matter which direction we put this in. I'm going to put it in with the openings facing this direction. So we do is stick this, there's these little notches in here. And actually, no, it looks like it's made to go in one way. The notches are wider on one end. So, oops. I'm not too worried about gluing this in yet. I'll be able to put some glue on the outside of this once I get this part in place, because I don't want to be fighting against time with that CA glue drying to get this part in here. She's going to be a little pain in the butt, isn't she? Alright, let's see how this end goes here. The notch right here that you got to get this part to fall into, and it's not cooperating very well. Alright, let's see if we can get this to slide into these other notches on the side here. That side, good there. And this is probably the only difficult part of this photo etch, is getting these little pieces to line up where you need them to. Here we go. That one just fell into place. And that's in place. So get this notch. You've also got a notch on this corner here. that needs to go in place. And the best thing I found to do to get this thing set in place without having to hold it an extended period of time, put a little glue on here, and I'm going to hit it with my accelerator. Alright guys, so I got this all sealed up, and you can see that black around there is some tulip that I'm using to cover up the light leaks from where the seams are on this. So I just filled that in with some tulip, and I'll let that dry, but it looks like the part's going to turn out pretty well though. So some nice intricate detail thanks to the Photoetch, and we'll get that put into place at some point. I'm not going to put that in until I get close to closing up the saucer, but at any rate, that's set. This part here is pretty much done. I've just got to fabricate. I want to fabricate some more of a cargo bay or something in here, give it a little more depth. But other than that, so that's pretty much it for that part as far as putting those together. I do have some other external details that need to go on. For example, this part here, I'm pretty sure, let me double check and make sure. Set these up out the way here where they can dry. So part 16, which is this part here. And you got to look at these numbers and see where these little arrows are pointing to tell you which part is which. Let me cut this out. Alright. And I'm not too worried about cutting off the little tabs around this, because this is pretty much going to replace this little detail on the saucer here, your little hatch here. And this is pretty much just going to replace that. And there's a certain way they want these pieces to face. And basically, when you look at these parts here, probably can't see it too on camera, but there's 3 little dashes on this side and like 2, well, maybe 4 on this side, 3 on this side. So the 4 they want facing to the front of the ship when you put this on. And I don't know that it would really make much of a difference. But this part here is replacing the kit part that goes here, which is fine with me because that kit part is just, there's no detail on that kit part at all that this is replacing. So it's just basically a bump that goes. You don't need a whole lot. You don't want this glue oozing out when you put this part on, so make sure you put it on pretty thin. And what we'll do is you've got 4 little dots on one side of this and 3 dashes on the other side, it looks like. And they want the 4 dots facing towards the front of the ship. So just put it on my finger like this. And let's see if we can get it lined up in here. Alright. And there we go. And I don't know if you can make out that little detail there, but there we go, that little Photoetch part is in place. So I've got that one there, and we've also got this little part back here. Now it calls for you to remove the raised detail on this. So what I did was I came in with my Dremel. You can do it with a piece of sandpaper too, because you want it to be flush with the rest of this part back here. But you just want to remove that little raised detail there. Remove this little cargo or this hatch detail here, and what you've got is you've got a couple parts that are going to go on here. These parts right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut one out. So this part needs to go on first, I believe. So cut that one out. And we'll need one of these too. Alright, so we got those two parts there. Yeah, what I'm going to do is trim these little tabs off here. Yep. Alright, so we got that part cleaned up. I don't know if you guys can hear it, my cat's sitting over there snoring. Alright, so now we've got that. What we're going to do is we're going to take some of our CA glue here. And again, don't leave this stuff on too thick because you don't want it oozing out all over the place once you put these details on. So we're going to take a part that has the raised detail on it like that. And it's just going to fit right into place where we took off the old detail, if you want to call it detail. There's not a whole lot of detail on that part. It's basically just a raised bump. This definitely adds a lot more detail to it. But we'll get that part on there and we'll let that sit. We'll take some more glue and we'll rub it on this part here. So what we're going to do now is take this other piece that we cut off. And it's basically going to sit right over top of it. Take this and slide it in place. Hey guys, sorry about that. This has not been a good weekend for recording. But so my camera just died on me right in the middle of putting these pieces on. But as you can see, you put that first part on that's got the hatch on it, and then you put this overlay piece on it. And you do that on both sides. Now this still center hatch part I'm not going to do yet because the part that goes on here actually needs to be a different color from the body of the ship. So what I'm going to do is what I'll do is I'll take some of my Tamiya putty here and I'll put some putty along this edge here to kind of blend it in with the rest of this. I'm not worried about the top or the bottom because it's going to be, you're not going to see that, and this edge here is already flush against this side here, so I don't have to worry about that. So all you got to do is take some putty at this point and let me see, where is my, just take a little bit of putty, don't need a whole lot. Oop. Don't need a whole lot on there, just enough to, you definitely don't want to get it on that photo etch detail there, so let's get that away from there. Just enough on this edge here so that you can come back and blend it in. A little bit there. Oh, and this stuff all wants to ooze out. And then we'll put a little bit on this edge here. And it's just to give it enough on there so I can come back once this sets up and hit it with the sandpaper and help blend it into the edge there. Get that a little bit off there. So, but yeah, so we'll let that set up, and once that's dried up, get a little bit here. I don't want that photo etch. Just come back and clean this up a little bit before it dries. One thing about this Tamiya putty, it will dry really quick. So, alright. So we'll let that dry and set up, and I'll come back and I'll just do some light sanding to it to get that blended in on those edges. And that's pretty much it for that part there. The rest of what I got here, I'm really not going to do yet. These are the inserts for, I think this is for the cargo hatches. And let's see, 10, 11. Yeah, one is for the upper and one is for, apparently the upper and lower cargo hatches are different sizes, which I've never noticed. But one of these is for the upper, which is, let's see, cargo bay B is for the upper, which is part 11. So the part 11 is apparently, the upper hatch is apparently a little bit larger than the lower hatch. But these parts will go in there, and then your cargo bay that I've already done up here will go in there. So I'm not worried about doing that yet, because I'm not going to insert this until after I've got the hole ready, just about ready to go together, or the saucer section anyway. And so get those done up, and then this is the insert. There's one of these for each shuttle hatch. So each one of the hatches for the shuttle bay, you can do up to 2. These are inserts that go in there for that part, so I'm not going to worry about doing this part yet either. And then we've got some little hatches that go in place of the hatches that are on the port side, your port hatch. You've got your rear hatch over the where the impulse crystal is, and then you've got the one on this other part that I just did that goes in there. So not going to worry about doing those yet either, because those all need to be, maybe except for this one on the back here, these parts need to be different colors, or are called for being different colors than what the hull itself is. So I don't want to, it'd be easier to paint this separate. So I'll do those later. So that's pretty much all I'm doing with the photo etch right now. So I just want to do a little video on that, and I know it's kind of a long video, but I want to cover it all in one video. So at any rate, there's your photo etch for the NX-01. Like I said, I'll show these sections when I actually do them. I'm not going to do them yet. It might be a while before I actually get to work on those. So that being said, again guys, I appreciate everybody that's watching and subscribing. I've had quite a few new subscribers, so thank you to everybody that's hitting that subscribe button down below. If you don't want to subscribe, please at least hit that like button if you find any of this information useful. And again, I appreciate everybody, and thank you to Cass over at Lake Monster Details for his support, and also thank you to Gus over at Decals for his support on this stuff. And he's still plugging away. If you've been following me on my Facebook page, and I've even been sharing it on the Star Trek Modelers group on Facebook, the images that the work he's doing on the Aztecs for this 1350 NX-01 are incredible. And once he gets those done, I will be anxiously awaiting to get those done and put on to. I got Brian's model sitting over here that's ready to go, and just waiting for those decals. Once we get those, and then hopefully mine will be up to par, ready for decals as well after I get Brian's done, and I think those things are going to look amazing. So again, thank you everybody. Appreciate everybody watching. Till next time, keep modeling.